My name is Jen, and I am on a journey in order to break free from the destructive patterns of disordered eating and in order to embrace a nourishing lifestyle. My roadmap can be described using an acronym of the word Nourisher. So I'm doing daily video blog posts in order to encourage you, equip you, and keep you up to date on my progress. If this content is helpful or encouraging to you, please consider subscribing, hitting that like button, and sharing with others. It is my deep desire that these videos would help to ignite nourishing transformations in us all. It's check-in time, everybody. Thank you for joining me. As I notice my emotions today, I am noticing anger, and let me tell you why. So if you have been journeying with me for a little while, you know that anger is not something that I am used to experiencing. So when I experience it, it kind of feels like it kind of hijacks my body and takes over and feels very overwhelming because I'm not eating it away as I normally would have if I even realized that I experienced it. So what happened was, during this whole pandemic craziness, we live abroad, and typically we get back to our home country once a year or so. And this year, well, for the past basically almost full 2 years, we have not been able to do so. So we had a little bit of extra money in the travel budget. And for our kids' sake, we decided to buy annual passes to a local amusement park. Okay, pause for effect. So you can hear our children's thunderous applause because that's just not a very like us thing to do. Like, we're bike riders, we go on walks, we play at the beach, but we don't typically like pay money to do attractions like that. So anyway, here we are with these annual passes. Now, one of our big reasons for getting the annual passes is because you get into the park 15 minutes early. So this is perfect for locals because you get this annual pass. You get in the annual pass line. It's a special kind of line. You don't have to wait with everybody else. You get into the park 15 minutes early. You run to your favorite attraction. You get in line. You're right at the beginning of the line. You go on that ride, maybe do one or two others. You spend an hour or two and you're out of there. But you can do that, once a weekend or so. But you never end up spending hours and hours waiting in these long lines. And during the pandemic, we were excited about that because we thought we don't want, to be there in the busy time of, these high season times. We just want to be there when nobody's around, ride the ride, and get out of there. So our kids have been thrilled. My husband has been so delightful. Let me press pause. So we bought these annual passes, and have you ever done something where just like you had this euphoric idea of how wonderful it was going to be, and then the reality turned out very different? That's what happened. So we bought these passes. The kids were so excited. They had never been to the theme park before, even though it's 20 minutes away. Or I should say they hadn't been on the big kid rides before. And so we get there and everybody's so excited. We get in line. My husband and I do our first ride. And we're like totally, first of all, sore because we got so rattled around. And second of all, just like I'm like looking for the garbage can because I'm feeling so sick. And we just looked at each other and we were like, what have we done? Like, we just bought an annual pass to put ourselves through this kind of misery, like for the whole year. Like, what are we going to do? So thankfully, my husband ended up finding a couple of rides that does not make him sick. And we both found one ride that if we go on it with the kids, as long as we close our eyes the whole time, we don't get vomitous. So, but he often, in the morning, on the weekend, he'll take them, let me do my things at home, and they go for a few hours, and then they come home. They're always home by lunch. So I get this call from them today. They're there, and they say, my husband says, hey, like, did something change? Like, when we bought these annual passes, it had this special early entrance, right? I said, yeah. He said, well, they're telling us that that's canceled now. That's not happening anymore. They just took that away. And so I, went online, and sure enough, they have just canceled that part of the annual pass privilege as of, the first of this month. So you would not believe, maybe you would believe, what would that make you feel like? But I feel so angry about this. And maybe it's just like the Western part of me. The announcement said, this is no longer available. Thank you for your understanding. And I thought, like, I don't understand. Like, no, please don't thank me for my understanding, because I'm not offering you my understanding right now. Like, I'm upset. Like, this is the whole reason why we bought these passes, was so that we could, enjoy it in this particular way. And so, it has been so interesting for me to feel that emotion so intensely and to say, wow, like, anger's here. All right, let's figure out how to process that. So let's press pause on that until we get to rewire our brain. But definitely noticing anger today. Opening up to others, what I noticed about this today, so my husband's at the theme park with the kids, and I'm at home, and it's a really sunny day. And so I've been like taking things outside that need to dry and hang and get sprayed off. And it's kind of one of those first nice, super sunny days. And where it's not supposed to rain, we typically, where we live, get rain periodically sometime during the day, but there's no rain on the forecast at all today. So things are drying out on the line. And, it's so easy for me to not open up to others and fall into, or choose to get into, a victim mentality. And that's what I'm noticing today is here I'm, often I notice myself like muttering underneath my breath as I clean up things for people, and I'm realizing, wait a second, I'm not asking for what I need. And I'm not holding other people accountable for their own stuff, AKA my children. So that's good for me to notice that I tend to be kind of like a sponge, where I just kind of like seep in stuff and take things without stopping and saying, you know what I really need is to say no here, to set up a boundary, or what I really need is to ask other people for help or ask other people to do their part. And I also, when I get into that, want to recognize, like we talked about yesterday, like life is just hard. Like adulting is whatever, tiring, time consuming, that kind of thing. And I want to take those opportunities when I'm feeling a little bit like, oh, this isn't very much fun to be doing this right now, to appreciate the adulting that people have done on my behalf while I grew up, AKA my parents. Thank you, Mom and Dad. And I was thinking about, we grew up on a farm, and I was remembering I remember my dad had to like clean out the cistern, and there's just a lot of work to live well. So there's that aspect of it. And then there's also the aspect of, of being so grateful for what people did for me while I was growing up, and what my husband does, and the other share of the other responsibilities that I'm not responsible for. Because it's so easy for me to fixate on what I am responsible for and not all the things that I don't have to do because someone else is responsible for. So that maybe brings me to, let me skip understanding the cycle for a moment, and that maybe brings me to rewiring my brain. So I had 2 different tasks today with rewiring my brain, and one was trying to process and deal with the emotion of anger, and the other one was noticing this victim mentality. So in regards to the anger, what I found was it was so helpful to use a quote by Dr. Jim Wilder to say, what is it like me to do in this situation? And to bring it back to an identity question of who is it like me to be, and what is it like me to do in this situation? Because as I'm like imagining myself like tearing a strip off the customer service agent but realizing no, it is like me to bring up my concerns, to address my concerns, and to do so recognizing that the person that I'm talking to is probably just an employee, may not be a person who has control or power over this situation, and to do so in a manner that is gracious and kind, and yet that is firm and strong. So I will let you know how that conversation goes. But the other thing with rewiring my brain is this idea of capturing our thoughts, or kind of taking these thoughts captive and actually looking at them and examining them is really helpful in healing. So for me to actually write down some things, and then either in the moment, if I can, and if not, a little bit later, go back and take a look at those thoughts. It's really helpful if we look for cognitive distortions in our thoughts. So there's a whole ton of, psychologists look at and therapists look at a whole bunch of different types of cognitive distortions. But I want to read a few of them to you just to see if, maybe you recognize any of these in yourself. I certainly recognize a lot of these myself, and these are just a few. There's a whole bunch. But one is polarized thinking, very black and white thinking. It's either this way or it's this way, and not being able to see a lot of gray. Another one that's similar is overgeneralization, saying, this always happens or this never happens, when probably actually it's not, 100% or 0%. Catastrophizing is another one of, just imagining or your thoughts always assuming that things are going to be the worst case scenario. Or personalization, meaning that you think that things are either your fault or impact you even when they don't. I used to do this all the time. When we first got married, my husband said I would often, get sullen or sad, and he would inquire as to what was going on, and it would be something that he would be upset about because I came from a family where we didn't express anger. He came from a family where they did express anger. Whenever he would express anger, I would assume it was because of me. I would assume that it was my fault that he was experiencing that. And he would look at me and be like, "You're crazy. This has nothing to do with you. I'm upset at the whatever." But that was something that I used to do a lot. Mind reading, where you assume that assume what somebody else is thinking or feeling. I also am very guilty of that a lot. Should statements, where you're always thinking, "Oh, I should do this, I should do this, I should do this." Emotional reasoning. Emotional reasoning is basically when you believe your thoughts, believe your emotions and believe them to be 100% true. We want to notice our emotions, attune to our emotions, soothe and calm our emotions, but we can't always believe our emotions. We still often need some additional information. For example, you may be mind reading for someone thinking they're thinking this about me and experience an emotion as a result of that, but maybe they're not thinking that about you. So often this idea of emotional reasoning, just thinking based on what we feel, we need to add some cognitive inputs in there to make sure that what we're believing is the truth. Mental filtering is kind of when you look at a situation and you only pick out the negatives. And I was working with someone, maybe I mentioned this, I was working with somebody recently, and I said, I noticed that you don't often notice when things go well. And their answer was kind of like, well, the standard is perfection. So, you don't get a gold star if you just meet the standard, And that idea, that kind of a mindset can be very draining for you and for the people around you as well. And then discounting the positive, kind of that always holding on to the negative, but if there is a positive that comes up, kind of explaining it away as not being important. There's so many more, but this idea, what is helpful for me is to either say, like to you, or to a loved one, and hear my thoughts out loud, and then go back and say, "Hey, wait a second, that was catastrophizing, or that was overgeneralizing, or that was whatever," or to write it down and then, as I said, either in the moment or later go back and check it out. So that is a really helpful rewiring practice for me, to be able to be mindful about the way that I'm thinking, to be able to catch those cognitive distortions, and to be able to reframe them and rephrase them, especially out loud if I can. There's something very solidifying neurologically if you can solidify them by saying them out loud, especially to someone else. It's very helpful. That's why you are so wonderful and valuable to me. So, yeah. So where am I? I skipped over understand the cycle because I don't want to talk about it. I don't really want to talk about it because it's almost lunch and I haven't eaten anything today. I have been bustling and cleaning, and I have lunch out on the table, so I am ready to eat after I check in with you, but I haven't really felt hungry. But with me, my hunger cues are so messed up that shouldn't be an excuse not to eat. So often I eat when my kids are around, just in order to, eat breakfast together with them, in order to be setting an example for what healthy rhythms look like. And as soon as they go away, I think, I'm too busy. So definitely not setting a good example there. I will. I hear you all saying, "Go and eat." I will go and eat after this. So that was understanding the cycle, and maybe also insulin-friendly eating all in one fell swoop. Although last night was so good. I told you that I got that goat's cheese, and that goat's cheese stuffed chicken breast was really, really yummy. So maybe I'll add some of that to my leftover lunch. And sleep again. I'm starting to notice a pattern. I'm going to sleep really early, like when I put my kids to bed, going to sleep, and then I get up kind of between like 1 and 3 for like an hour or two, and then I'm able to go back to sleep. So it's not perfect, but I am getting lots of hours, and I'm waking up really refreshed. So that is good news. And hydration, I just filled a whole bunch of bottles because we're going to go to the lake. We just bought stand-up paddle boards. So again, this is reallocation of our holiday budget, and really excited about this because we've been reading about how, some people even say that, stand-up paddleboarding is, kind of akin to, in terms of a physical benefit, to running. And I'm a horrible runner. I have, my brother was on like the national running team, and I can't run to save my life. But really like the stand-up paddleboarding because not only is it gentle movement, which for me is so important to embrace gentle movement and not overly rigorous movement and enjoyable movement, but it's restful while moving at the same time. And I love that combination. And I love to be outdoors, and I love we live in such a gorgeous place. We have a lake really close to us. So really excited to do that this afternoon. That is one of I'm sure that is very brain rewiring for me. And it's a place where I can embrace play more easily with my kids. We can do it together. And I'm really looking forward to doing that. So, I think my reward today is this idea of this identity based in love and grace, that my identity of who I know myself to be and who I act to be can be more and more solidly linked in God's love and grace, and not just in a do it, that's what I should do, but that's who I really am kind of way. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the day, and I'm thankful to have you with me, and I really hope that you have a super nourishing day, and I will check in with you tomorrow. Bye for now.